Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to ASEAN China Survey 2022 launching event. This event is brought to you by Foreign Policy Community of Indonesia, the largest foreign policy group in Indonesia and in Southeast Asia. First and foremost, let us give a warm welcome and express our gratitude to our partners who have given a valuable contribution through this survey process and who have joined us today. We have 21 partners coming and ranging from universities, think tanks, and civil society organizations from all across ASEAN countries. We have from Royal Academy of Cambodia, International Relations Institute of Cambodia, Institute of Strategic and International Studies, or ISIS Malaysia, the Young Seekers, National University of Laos, New Era University, Malaysian Youth Diplomacy, Asian Law Students Association, Sociable & Co. from Brunei, ASEAN Youth Organization, Asian Vision Institute, ASEAN Business Youth Association, ASEAN Youth Advocates Network Brunei Darussalam, ASEAN Youth Entrepreneurs Council, Higher Education Malaysia Association, Policy and Economic Affairs Center of Malaysia, or in short PEACE, Institute for Democracy and Economic Affairs, or IDEAS from Malaysia, Better Burma from Myanmar, Khmer Youth Association, Khmer Youth and Social Development, and University Malaya. We would also like to welcome officials, experts, and our colleagues all across ASEAN countries who have joined us here, as well as everyone who are tuning in through our YouTube live stream. We have over 200 participants coming from 33 different countries, including Cambodia, Vietnam, Brunei, Myanmar, and other countries, including Australia, India, Japan, Netherlands, Germany, Bulgaria, Canada, Saudi Arabia, and other countries. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. We are glad to have you here with us. In this special day, we are delighted to announce that ASEAN China Survey 2022 has been concluded and finalized. Ladies and gentlemen, today, it's also marking the third year of ASEAN China Survey. And after a series of socialization and focus group discussions, today we will present to you briefly on the findings. And aside from that, we will also have an interesting panel with our distinguished panelists discussing the findings under the theme of managing cooperation amidst geopolitical tension. To start of our event today, let us listen to a remark from the founder and chairman of FPCI, Dr. Dinopati Jalal. Here is a message from Dr. Dino Jalal.
And chairman of Foreign Policy Community of Indonesia, the largest grassroots foreign policy organization in Indonesia and in Southeast Asia. I want to welcome all of you to the ASEAN China Survey Report launching event. First, I want to welcome Ambassador Teng Chi-jun, Ambassador of People's Republic of China to ASEAN. Thank you for making the time to be here, and I'm also quite sad to know that you will be leaving us as you are ending your term soon. So thank you so much for all that you have done, all the great things that you have done in advancing ASEAN-China relations. I also want to extend my sincere gratitude to our 21 organization partners that are coming from Southeast Asian nations who have taken part in supporting this good project, because this project is meant to be a collaboration between the think tanks and CSOs across the region. I also want to thank and congratulate FPCI Research and Analysis for publishing the third edition of this survey. Thank you, Dr. Sofwan, for diligently collecting the data and analyzing them, and also the whole team, including Calvin and Esther and the rest of the team. We have been neighbors with China for thousands of years, and we've had a rich history together. Right? Now we're charting a course in the 21st century, and the future of Southeast Asia and the future of China is definitely linked. We have a future of peace and prosperity that we have built and we will continue to build together. China was one of the first countries to accede to the Treaty of Amity and Cooperation in 2003. And now China is one of the first countries to enter into ASEAN's comprehensive and strategic partnership. I think that says a lot about how the diplomatic relations between ASEAN and China have progressed very rapidly in recent years. And this is why we are doing this ASEAN China survey report. The survey aims to assess and update Southeast Asian perspectives on the relationship between ASEAN and China across the board, which includes issues such as political security, trade, economy, social culture, COVID-19, strategic issues, and many more. Through the survey, we can identify and analyze key challenges, trends, and opportunities and prospects. We can also look at what perceptions have shifted and what perceptions remain, and what are the challenges with regard to those perceptions. This year's survey is different from last year's survey. Last year in 2021 edition, we focus on shifts in perception in the past 30 years of ASEAN-China relations. This year's survey is focused on Southeast Asians' perspectives on geopolitical issues surrounding ASEAN-China relations, which includes the Russia-Ukraine war, Myanmar crisis, South China Sea disputes, Mekong River issue, power politics, and the emergence of minilateralism arrangement in the region. Adding to this, the report will also feature a comparison on the data collected in the past 3 years of the survey. We also improved the number of respondents from 1,000 in 2020 and 2021 to 1,658 from respondents of 10 ASEAN countries and 5 groups, which is official, academia, business, civil society, and students. I learned that the past 2 editions of survey was widely read and have contributed to the advancement and understanding of ASEAN-China public discourse. I hope this year's survey will again contribute not only to the academic discourse, but also to the policy-making process within ASEAN and China. We're looking forward to hearing the feedback from you on this ASEAN-China survey, and please do not hesitate to contact us for future collaboration and discussions. Thank you.
Yep, that was the message from FPCI Chairman Dr. Dinopati Jalal. Next, we will listen to a remark from His Excellency Teng Sichun, the Ambassador of People's Republic of China to ASEAN. Here's the message from Ambassador Teng Sichun to ASEAN-China Survey 2022. Ladies and gentlemen, due to a technicalities problem, we will skip the remark first and we will get back to it later. So next, we would like to invite some of our partners to deliver a remark to us all as an opening remark. So these are 4 partners of ASEAN-China Survey 2022. First of all, I would like to invite Thomas Daniel from Institute of Strategic and International Studies Malaysia, or in short, ISIS Malaysia. Thomas, please, you may have the floor.
Thank you very much, Jenny. I trust you can hear me. A very good evening, Pak Dino, and Your Excellencies. I thank you for allowing me the opportunity to share some few words here. On behalf of the Institute of Strategic and International Studies Malaysia, ISIS Malaysia, it was a pleasure to work with the FPCI and many other stakeholders in this survey process. Ladies and gentlemen, Southeast Asia is a region that is undergoing significant dynamic change. I don't think we ourselves fully understand it or its implications. There are great opportunities, but also tremendous stress points, both internal and external. And I think there's a tend to underestimate the gravity of these fluxes. Now, at times like this, many often look internally to ASEAN member states and the policies and approaches that they have. But for the past decade, however, ASEAN's strengths and trajectories have also been shaped through engagement with its dialogue partners. Now, this might be a contested viewpoint for some, but I do believe that for better or for worse, there is no dialogue partner of greater consequence to ASEAN than China. The extent and the breadth of bilateral and multilateral relations between China and all of ASEAN members and all ASEAN's 10 member states, and indeed ASEAN as a multilateral organization, is something that very few others can equal. Thus, surveys such as this, which seek to gauge the views of key respondents, of officials or those in the private sector, civil society, academics, students. These surveys are essential in continuing to shape and inform the view of this very important bilateral and multilateral relationship with such an important dialogue partner. The theme selected for this year, Managing Cooperation Amidst Geopolitical Tension, perhaps best captures the zeitgeist of our time. And one of the core challenges that policymakers in ASEAN and all its dialogue partners are now grappling with, how to cooperate with ASEAN amidst significant tensions among its own dialogue partners. I do congratulate FPCI again and all involved in formulating and distributing and analyzing the survey. And I'm very confident that this survey, like those before it, which I personally referred to in preparing speaking notes, etc., over the past years, will be much needed and add a lot of nuance and knowledge to conversations that we will need to have in the coming years on this very interesting topic and this very important relationship. Jenny, thank you very much. I hand the floor back to you.
Thank you, Thomas, for your remark. Your message emphasized the theme of this year's survey, Managing Cooperation Amidst the Geopolitical Tension. Also, thank you as well for your valuable contribution and partnership throughout the survey process. Next, we would like to invite Dr. Son Sam from Royal Academy of Cambodia to deliver a remark. Dr. Son Sam, you may have the floor.
Thank you so much, Jenny, for your kind invitation. And first, I would like to congratulate to foreign policy community of Indonesia for this great achievement. And I also would like to pay my humble respects to Ambassador of China to ASEAN, who is the main partners of the IPCI during this time. And the Royal Academy of Cambodia is honored to be invited to be a partner in this project in this year. And I hope that this project will be the main contribution to further strengthen the good relation between ASEAN and China. And I also hope that this great project will be another big project that will further understanding among the academics, researcher, and student in ASEAN. And last but not least, because Jenny told me that I just have at least 3 minutes, and I wish we can work together further in the next future. And I wish all of the participants and friends and colleagues who try their best to complete this project for all the best and always successful in your next project. Okay, thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Sunsam, for your remark. Well, your remark may only be below 3 minutes, but you have spent more than 3 hours contributing to the survey process, and you have always been a good fellow of FPCI. And for that, we're thankful. Thank you, Dr. Sunsam. Next, we would like to invite Dr. Bola Viane Siso from National University of Laos. Dr. Viane, you may take over.
Thank you very much, Jenny. And dear His Excellency, Dan Sijun, and also Dr. Fatin Datang. Respective ladies and gentlemen, today is my great pleasure to be speak at the representative of National University of Laos, specifically for the Faculty of Law and Political Science. Actually, this year, the China survey, I think, is the first year that Lao participants, the number of Lao participants is increased if compared to the last part in the past. So actually, as the representative of the geopolitics lecturers, I would say that this survey is very good for all the country in Southeast Asia and also cooperation with China, because ASEAN and China and also to Laos, it have really good cooperation. So I think it's a really good time for Laos to be participate in this survey. And I would say one sentence that is very important for all countries, that the cooperation is the most important for all of us, particularly from Laos, because as you might know that Laos is the number of Lao participants is used to be very small, but this year I think is the significant year for us, and let's keep this year to be a good moving for the cooperation, not only for Laos but for all countries in Southeast Asia, past China. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Fiane, for your remark. As mentioned, reaching out Laos respondents have been challenging, and we're thankful
Yes.
for our friendship and partnership with the National University of Laos. Thank you, Dr. Fiane. Last but not least, we will listen to a remark from Calvin Wee from the Young Seekers. Here is a remark from Calvin.
Hi everybody, Kelvin here. I'm the co-founder of the Young Seekers, a non-profit that brings together vibrant, competent ASEAN youth leaders who are passionate about advancing the ASEAN and China economic growth corridor. As a strong supporting partner for the ASEAN-China survey, I take much interest in helping FPCI to disseminate the survey amongst my community and analyzing the data and trends that we get from this survey. I would like to commend the enormous effort by the FPCI team to run the survey since 2020. With increasing geopolitical tension and uncertainty, this survey is a valuable feedback mechanism for us to understand the sentiments on the ground. As a youth myself, when I talk to my friends, I become painfully aware that youths in ASEAN do not know enough and recognize the potential of the ASEAN and China economic region. The youth of today will be the future trailblazers and leaders in their respective countries and their respective industries. I hope that with the insights from this survey, we can be inspired to brainstorm solutions and turn them into actionable suggestions on how we can work on the gaps to our respective governments. With that, let's hope with the publishing of the ASEAN-China survey in subsequent years, we can start to see the creation of trust and talents for the region, a narrative that is beneficial to all stakeholders in this relationship, to foster a path for creating new opportunities and to solve existing problems. Thank you very much.
Yeah, that was the message from Calvin from the Young Seekers. Calvin was based in Singapore, and the Young Seekers has been a long partner of FPCI. Once again, we thank all of our partners who are joining us here in the Zoom from all across ASEAN countries, 21 universities, CSOs, and think tanks who have been contributing to our survey process in a very active way and very supportive way. Next is the awaited part of today's event. Before having a panel discussion with our distinguished panelists, we will first listen to a presentation on the survey report. So for this, I would like to invite Dr. Sofwan Albana, the supervisor of ASEAN-China survey program. Dr. Sofwan, you may take over.
Thank you very much, Jenny. And thank you very much for the whole team for making this event possible. Also, thank you very much for all excellencies and participants, and of course the panelists for attending today's event. We really hope that this launching event will be a beneficial event for us all, especially because this survey is the survey that we think would be positively contributing to the discussion on ASEAN and ASEAN-China cooperation in today's contemporary world, especially marked by rising geopolitical tensions at global and regional level. So, without further ado, I would like to highlight some of the important findings of this survey. Let's move. So this year's title for the ASEAN-China survey is Managing Cooperation Amidst Geopolitical Tension. So this is an annual survey, but every year we have a special topic which hopefully capture the dynamics within the particular year. And this year we choose the focus on geopolitical tension because of the possible impact on the geopolitical tension in Ukraine, to the calculation in the ASEAN-China cooperation, as well as because of the increasing geopolitical tension in the region itself. Let's move to the next slide. So this why this survey is conducted and why ASEAN China. It is important to highlight that ASEAN's relationship with China is arguably one of the most consequential relationship to the region. It has been growing significantly in the last years. However, this is also not always smooth, not all aspects of it are viewed similarly in different parts of ASEAN. So there is a need to understand the relationship between ASEAN and China by understanding the nuances, the complexity, the diversity of Southeast Asian perspectives, which then in turn will help policymakers and the general public to better understand the relationship. This is the third survey conducted by FPCI. The first one was in 2020, and now is the third one. And throughout that previous editions, we received many feedbacks, including positive comments on how understanding the perceptions from the public help them design better and more effective strategy and policies regarding to the relationship and beyond. Let's move. So this survey, as mentioned, is aimed at assessing and understanding different perspectives, the diversity of perspectives among the people of ASEAN in 10 ASEAN countries and in 5 categories which we identify here, from government officials, academia and think tanks, business community, civil society, and students. So we try to capture a comprehensive range of perceptions of the people in ASEAN and their attitudes towards ASEAN-China cooperation that exist in the public. We try to identify the patterns, and based on that, we then formulate some general recommendation based on the findings. Let's go to the next slide. So this is the 3rd edition of the ASEAN-China survey. And as you see, the color change every year, but not only the color change every year, we have regular questions that we ask every year to get the pattern, but at the same time, we are also having some specific questions on the special topics. Last year, we have the 30 years relationship, so we compare the stereotypes with what people think of China right now. But this year, we are looking at geopolitical tension as the focus. So we include some questions, including on the impact of Russia, Ukraine, etc. Let's move. So the research is designed to get a reliable measure of perceptions on ASEAN-China cooperation in ASEAN countries, and to provide policy recommendations based on that. To do that, we employ a sampling strategy, data collection methodology, and data analysis techniques that are designed to capture a comprehensive range of perceptions and attitudes towards ASEAN-China cooperation that exist in ASEAN's public discourse. So because this is not a survey like the electability survey, which needs a strict number of respondents that reflects the exact demographic composition of the population, should not be treated as such. The aim of this survey is to capture the comprehensive range of perceptions. That's why we identify different categories and hopefully can have a representative number of each categories in each countries. So it focuses more on what extent each category in each country is represented rather than on how the samples are reflecting the demographic composition. Based on this methodological construction, we put 1,600 respondents as the target, which we thankfully are able to reach. We sent online questionnaire, which includes 36 questions with approximately 15 minutes time to fill, with more than 20,000 target respondents, with return, and in the end we got 1,600, more than 1,600 respondents coming back. Let's move to the next slide. So yes, this is the respondents profile. The number in general increase in almost all countries. So including in countries like Brunei, which we have difficulty to reach, but because the size of the sample is also the full of the database is also quite small. But compared to last year, the nominal number of the respondents in each country is actually larger. However, the percentage, some of them decrease, because while the nominal number increase because of the total number of respondents increases more, their share is getting smaller. But we are quite sure that the number of respondents are quite representative for each countries. In the categories distribution, students are intentionally have another special attention, because we categorize the respondents into two major categories: students and elites. Elites are composed of four different categories: government officials, academia, business community, and civil society, with distribution as you can see in the picture. In the full report, you can see the comparisons between categories between students, but we will highlight some of the main findings here because of the time limitation. Let's move. So here are some of the most important findings. First is on the most satisfactory areas of cooperation, and it is quite consistent with the previous surveys, which sees economic cooperations on the top of the list: trade with 68%, investment, tourism, technology and industry 4.0, industry and supply chains also made it to the big five. So this is interesting because previously the supply chain and industry 4.0 was not there, but now it is becoming one of the most important and satisfactory areas of cooperation, probably due to the COVID-19. Let's move. On the least satisfactory areas of cooperation, we also see similar pattern with previous survey, which see defense and security issues remain as the most the source of anxieties in the relationship between ASEAN and China: defense issues, cybersecurity issues, transnational crime, immigration, and borders. But interestingly, we also have the environmental issues there, with quite a significant respondents put them as the least satisfactory areas of cooperation. Let's move to the next slide. This is on so if we look at that patterns on the least and most satisfactory aspects of cooperation, we see this also consistent with the findings in other questions, where generally when asked about economic and social culture of cooperation, the respondents tend to provide generally positive assessment, although it's not clear cut, but it tend to be more positive rather than negative. Let's move. However, political and security issues remain as the source of anxieties, with strong number of skepticism or satisfaction in cooperation in the progress of the consultation of the Code of Conduct on the statement on China respects the national unity, sovereignty, and territorial integrity, the ASEAN centrality, which shows that while split, the positive and negative assessment, and we see general patterns of anxieties here. Let's move. This year we also ask a question on we identify several flagship initiatives by different countries, and we ask the respondents to rank these initiatives and their contribution to ASEAN vision according to them, of course. So these are the results. In the overall respondents, the Belt and Road Initiative, Global Development Initiative, and Global Security Initiative by China was ranked on the top, and then US Indo-Pacific Strategy and Indo-Pacific Economic Framework. And then, interestingly, it's South Korean New Southern Policy. It is interesting that Japan initiative is not there on the big three, probably because it is overshadowed by US Indo-Pacific strategy. It is interesting too that students also put more positive assessment on the EU Indo-Pacific strategy and the Global Gateway project. In the elite, it is interesting that the Australia strategic view on the Indo-Pacific is seen as more important and contributive towards ASEAN vision. Let's move. And this is, we also would like to ask the respondents about their perception on the influence of different dialogue partners on their influence in the region. Top three are consistently China, US, Japan. It's rather interesting that US is second rather than Japan, but probably because of the perception on the geopolitical competition. With Korea also go among the top 5 in all categories. India, interestingly, is number 4 among the students. Australia can get in the Australia. No, not Australia. It's UK in the among the elites. Let's move. Here are some other key highlights. We ask them about some initiatives which might be relevant to ASEAN-China relationship, including the GDI, the Global Development Initiatives, promoted by China. It is interesting that almost half never actually heard the GDI. So if Chinese people hear this, you need more socialization maybe. So let's move to the next one. Among those answer that they know the GDI, the response is quite positive. They generally see that ASEAN should embrace the GDI. It's quite consistent in the general groupings as well as among students or among the elites, over 60% in all categories. Let's move. The other initiative, the Global Security Initiative, we also ask about that question. And it is interesting that the number who hear GSI is smaller than the number who hear the GDI. So GDI is slightly more popular than GSI. So only 43% have heard about the GSI. Among the students, is 45%. It's more in the GSI. So it seems like government officials, business, academia hear this more than the students with 57%. Let's move. Then similar treatment was done for this question. If you are answering yes, we also ask, should ASEAN embrace the GSI? It is interesting that among those who know and ever heard the GSI, they say that ASEAN must embrace the GSI. It is interesting to note that among the elites, where knowledge is on GSI is relatively higher, the number of who answer yes is smaller than the student. Let's move. We also ask this question on how close is your government to China in different countries. It is interesting that many countries see that their government is close to China. Some of them even answer very close, like in Laos, where 44% answer that their government is very close, while only 21.49 answered very close. But in general, the total number of close and very close and somewhat close is quite dominant. So there is a strong perception that the government is close to China in different ASEAN countries. Let's move. When asked about what type or what kind of influence does China have in your country, many of them identify both political and economic influence as the influence of China. While it is interesting in some countries, however, it is interesting to note that if we look at the general patterns, in which includes all countries, the share between economic influence and those who answer both political and economic influence are quite equal. But if we look at Laos, then Myanmar and Vietnam, the answer identify both political and economic influences in the influence of China in their countries. Let's move. This is the question, which also might be interesting on a direct question on, do you trust China? In general, yeah, it's quite split. More than 40% answer that they do not want to answer, but among those who prefer to answer, it's almost quite similar. 27% yes, 29% no. But the number is quite diverse in different ASEAN countries. Indonesia also see quite a split, quite similar with in Philippines. But if we look at Vietnam and Thailand, the number on no answer is higher than in Indonesia, Philippines, probably because they are closer also to China, so the potential tension is higher. Let's move. What aspect of trust and distrust? Again, political and security issues becoming very important source of anxieties, and economic cooperation becoming a part where they trust China most. Technology also an important aspect of cooperation. Let's move. China and CPTPP. It's interesting that mainly supports Chinese participation in the CPTPP if China wants to join, especially the business community, which overwhelmingly support if China wants to participate in the CPTPP. Let's move to the next. This Myanmar crisis, which remains a problem in the region. See that ASEAN is a bit not on the right track. ASEAN is not attentive and responsive enough on that. And on the China's role on the crisis, almost half had no clear knowledge, and 20% more have no opinion on that. Let's move. On South China Sea and Mekong River, perception on the management of South China Sea generally sees that something must be done. It is not on the right track. So as we see, there is a perception of stagnation there. So it might be an important homework to be completed. Let's move. This is the question on Russia-Ukraine war. 71% say the war affected regional stability despite its distance. And it is interesting that when asked about what should China do on that, according to them, they say that China should play a role in ending the war peacefully, around 27%. Let's move. On the US-China competition, we generally see that the public sees that there is a competition between US and China, and this will affect ASEAN centrality in the region, as well as creating challenge for ASEAN unity. Let's move. On multilateral mechanism like Quad and AUKUS, in general, the most popular answers say that they do not have the opinion, maybe because they need to wait for more development. But among those who gave their answer, most frequent answer, see Quad and AUKUS could undermine regional stability, although the number is actually not that far with those who answer that Quad will strengthen regional stability. Let's move. On NATO, most frequent answer among the respondents, 38%, saw that NATO intended to increase its presence in the region. And the response are quite diverse. Let's move. Let's go quickly on some patterns in country comparison. Let's move. It's interesting to see that Singapore and Vietnam, the respondents from Singapore and Vietnam generally see the view that US-China relationship disunited ASEAN countries, while in Malaysia, 41% noted that it could even undermine ASEAN centrality. Let's move. Let's move. You can see the okay, let's go because this might be interesting because it's on Myanmar. The most popular answer on Myanmar crisis is that China has not been contributing positively in addressing the political crisis in Myanmar. It is interesting. Let's move. And this is on CPTPP. Singapore respondents express Chinese support for Chinese entries into CTPP, but 41% from Vietnam and 36% from Thailand opposed that. So let's move. So let's go to the conclusion. Let's move. In general, our survey found that amid such uncertainty, most respondents still see the importance of maintaining and developing strong and mutually beneficial relationship with China. It is worth noting that defense and political aspects have been labeled as the aspect with the highest dissatisfaction, while economic and socio-cultural relationship is relatively positive. The survey also found that there is strong nuance in the perception of ASEAN towards China. So it's difficult to identify respondents or countries as anti or pro-China because of these nuances. The result of the survey also shows that most of the respondents are aware that they are living in an age of geopolitical tension, and however, they hope that ASEAN is not sucked into this geopolitical tension, but have their own room for maneuvers with maintaining a balanced approach with the different great powers. It is also need to be recognized that ASEAN faces its own internal challenges. It needs to strengthen its centrality, not by demanding it, but also by proving it, like in the case of Myanmar. Let's move the last slide. Is on the recommendation. We have 7 general recommendations. And both ASEAN and China need to use the comprehensive strategic partnership to bolster economic cooperation, which is assessed positively. China and ASEAN needs to be more transparent and accountable in considering and mitigating the environmental and social impacts of cooperation initiatives, because the environmental issues also listed in the least satisfactory relationship. ASEAN and China must develop stronger cooperation in environmental issues. ASEAN and China needs to show and communicate their goodwill to make progress in difficult political security issues, such as the negotiation of the South China Sea Code of Conduct. Amidst the geopolitical tension, ASEAN and China could develop more channels for developing mutual trust through Track 1.5 and Track 2. ASEAN and China can open dialogues on how to translate ASEAN outlook on the Indo-Pacific into concrete initiatives. And lastly, to ASEAN itself. ASEAN needs to ensure that it can be an effective organization, especially in dealing with pressing issues such as the Myanmar crisis. I think that's all for the survey. If you would like to see the complete report, you can check it in our website. Thank you very much. Returning the platform to Jenny.
Thank you, Dr. Sofwan, for the comprehensive presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, if you have any question regarding the survey, you may save it, and we will have an open questions and answer session later on in the end of this launching event, which is also open for any participating media should there be any question to be addressed. Now that we have been briefed on the findings of this year's survey, I assume we are ready to jump into our experts panel discussion. But before we go to that, since we had a technical problem earlier in displaying Ambassador Teng Sichun's opening message to us, let us first listen to what Ambassador Teng Sichun have to say about this year's survey. Here is a remark from His Excellency Teng Sichun.
Excellency Dr. Dino Pati Jalal, Chairman of FPCI, distinguished experts, scholars, and media representatives, dear friends, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. It gives me great pleasure to attend the launching ceremony of the ASEAN-China Survey 2022 report. On behalf of the Chinese mission to ASEAN, I would like to express my great appreciation to FPCI for the excellent work it has done for this survey report, and to express my sincere gratitude to all the friends who have long supported the development of China-ASEAN relations. Last November, President Xi Jinping and ASEAN leaders attended the special summit to commemorate the 30th anniversary of China-ASEAN dialogue relations and jointly announced the establishment of China-ASEAN Comprehensive Strategic Partnership, which opened a new chapter of the relations between our two sides. In the past year, China and ASEAN have focused on the building of a peaceful, safe and secure, prosperous, beautiful and amicable whole, and achieved gratifying results in various fields of cooperation. We have worked together to meet the challenges from various spillovers, safeguarding an oasis of peace. We have shown solidarity in fighting the COVID-19 pandemic and strengthened cooperation in emergency management, building a shield of safety. We have jointly implemented RCEP and accelerated connectivity, creating a highland for development. We have enhanced cooperation on green development, climate change response, environmental protection, and energy transition, bringing together green drivers. We have arranged for students from ASEAN countries to return to China to resume classes in an orderly manner, sped up the resumption of people-to-people exchanges, cementing the pillar of public support. However, we also see that the external environment of China-ASEAN relations is still full of risks and challenges. The world is entering a new phase of turbulence and transformation. Changes unseen in the century are accelerating. Global crises and challenges are emerging. Certain countries put their own hegemonic interests above the common interests of regional countries, blatantly pursuing their own priorities at the expense of others and following the ideology-first approach. they gang up and stir up troubles, bringing more instability and uncertainty to the region. Ladies and gentlemen, friends, the survey reports released by FPCI in the past 2 years bore witness to the recognition and expectation of China-ASEAN relations among ASEAN people, and also reflected many constructive opinions and suggestions from them. I think there is a basic consensus that in the new circumstances, a continuously deepened China-ASEAN CSP will not only improve the well-being of the peoples on both sides, but also significantly contribute to peace, stability, development, and the prosperity of the region and the world as well. In the face of the new circumstances, China is ready to work with ASEAN, using 3 C's as a driving force to push our relations forward. The first C is commitment. The commitment should be honored. The 20th National Congress of the Communist Party of China was successfully held recently. The Congress reaffirmed that China will always be committed to its foreign policy goals of upholding world peace and promoting common development, and will be dedicated to promoting a human community with a shared future. Facing the new circumstances, China will unswervingly take ASEAN as a high priority in its neighborhood diplomacy, support ASEAN unity and ASEAN community building, support ASEAN centrality in the regional architecture, and support ASEAN in playing a bigger role in regional and international affairs. We are ready to work with ASEAN to uphold open regionalism, promote true multilateralism, jointly implement the Global Security Initiative, and demonstrate through practical actions that we always put credibility, the greater good, and sincerity first, for we believe this is the way how neighbors should treat each other. The second C is cooperation, and the cooperation should be the focus. Cooperation is the key word and the golden key to the development of China-ASEAN relations. Over the past 30 years since we established dialogue relations, it is because of our constant focus on win-win cooperation that China and ASEAN have worked together to overcome major challenges, including the financial crisis, natural disasters, and the COVID-19 pandemic, forging a closer brotherhood through mutual support and making China-ASEAN cooperation the strongest, most successful, and the most vibrant example of regional cooperation in East Asia. In light of the new circumstances, both sides should focus on achieving post-pandemic resilience and sustainable development, effectively enhance the synergy between the Global Development Initiative, the Belt and Road Initiative, and the ASEAN development strategies, promote the smooth implementation of RCEP and the construction of China-ASEAN FTA 3.0, jointly address challenges in fields including food, energy, and supply chains, and jointly promote green and digital transformation so as to achieve common development through cooperation. The third C is confidence, and confidence should be firmly established. China and ASEAN share similar development philosophies, both insisting that development should benefit the interests of all people. We cherish a common vision of peace, both hoping to maintain the hard-won peaceful development in the region. We advocate common values, both emphasizing the importance of family, community, consensus, and morality. These serve as the important foundation and inner drives of the development of our relations. Facing the new circumstances, we should fully capitalize on our region's unique strengths of cultural diversity, resume the flow of people post the COVID-19 pandemic in an active, prudent, and orderly manner, strengthen exchanges in areas such as women, youth, culture, education, media, and think tanks to build better understanding, bring hearts closer together, and form one big family between our peoples, cement strong public support for the stability and the progress of the China-ASEAN Comprehensive Strategic Partnership. Last but not least, I wish today's event a great success and look forward to your continued attention and the contribution of wisdom and strength to the development of China-ASEAN relations. I thank you.
That was the message from Ambassador Deng Xijun to ASEAN-China Survey 2022. Ladies and gentlemen, now it is time for us to enter the main discussion. We will have 3 distinguished panelists today discussing ASEAN-China relations on Southeast Asian perception towards China, the encounter challenges, opportunities, and the ways forward. So this session will be moderated by Calvin Cole, the co-director of research and analysis of FPCI, who is the program coordinator of ASEAN-China Survey. Calvin, you may take over.
Thank you, Jenny. Hello, everyone. My name is Calvin Cole. I am the co-director of FPCI Research Analysis, and I'm also serving as the program coordinator of ASEAN-China Survey program in the past 3 years. So today, joining me in the panels, we have a very interesting panels. We have 3 distinguished speakers all the way from Malaysia, the Philippines, and also Indonesia. Joining with me, Mr. Andy Bayuni, senior editor at the Jakarta Post. Hi, Andy, how are you? I think you're still muted, sir.
Hi, Calvin. I'm good. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Andy. From Malaysia, we have Dr. Sheila Devi Michael, senior lecturer, Department of International and Strategic Studies at University of Malaya. Doctor, how are you?
I'm fine. Thank you. Thank you, Kelvin.
Thank you, Doctor. The last speaker is coming from the Philippines, Dr. Renato Cruz de Castro, Distinguished Full Professor at the International Studies Department, De La Salle University. Dr. Renato, how are you?
I'm doing well. Good afternoon to everyone.
Thank you for 3 of you for making it this time. The survey is very interesting because this year's survey, we increased the number of the respondents, and the survey represent 1,658 respondents of Southeast Asian respondents, and we take the theme of managing cooperations amid geopolitical tensions. Now, as you have a privilege as a panelist to read the report in advance 2 days before, now I want to ask you in one round, what would be your take? What was your take? What intrigued you most when you read the survey report? And what will be your highlights if you would like to share in the panel? So each of you will have 3 to 5 minutes to share your thoughts. I would like to start from Andy. Sir, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Calvin. And good afternoon, good morning to friends in Europe. And I'm glad to be here. And thank you for FPCI for having me here to talk about the survey and about the tensions affecting the relationship between ASEAN and China. First, I want to comment, of course, Dr. Sofwan and his team for this great survey. the third one in a row, and I say it's a very good one, particularly this one this year. My impression after reading studying the survey is that there is greater acceptance among the political elite in ASEAN of China becoming a superpower and playing that role. And this is clear from the findings. For example, in the support towards the Global Development Initiative and the Global Security Initiatives, although probably half of them have not heard of it, but those who have heard and have studied the initiatives, the majority of them actually recommend that ASEAN governments embrace both initiatives. Now, these are initiatives that come only from a superpower, and China is now becoming a superpower. It has had the Belt and Road initiatives before, and now, since last year, President Xi Jinping announced the Global Development Initiative at the UN General Assembly, and then in April, I think at the Bao Forum, he announced the Global Security Initiatives. Now, a superpower country must have these two types of initiatives because to eliminate suspicions among other countries, particularly neighboring countries, about its intentions. These are very good initiatives, and I think supplement the early one, the Belt and Road Initiative. So, and I think the way the respondents answer the questions is a clear signal that among the political elite in ASEAN, they support the idea of China playing that role as a superpower, but a responsible one, and that's very important because on the other side, the other findings in the survey, for example, there is clearly a deficit in trust in the relationship, and trust, of course, is always important in any relationship. And the problem also revealed in the survey is that while China and ASEAN are making huge progress in the economic sector cooperation, the political and security cooperation is trailing behind, and that's not good. We talk about the strategic comprehensive partnership, the new one, and the FPCI recommendation number 1 says that more economic cooperation. I would say that you cannot just simply boost economic cooperation without addressing the political and security cooperation, which is lagging behind, and this somehow sort of affected the trust between among ASEAN political elite towards China. So there is still a big homework in that relationship, but I think the survey helps in identifying in what areas that we are lagging and we need to address. Part of the problem is with China, but I think also part of the problem is with ASEAN. But we can sit down and discuss this and resolve the remaining differences. I know political and security situation is tough. It's always easy to deal with boost economic cooperation, but if you don't address political and security cooperation, I think this relationship will not reach its maximum potential because something else is holding back. So I'll stop there for now, and then we can discuss more afterwards. Thank you, Calvin.
Thank you, Andy. I definitely agree with you. We need to have a very holistic approach of the relationship, which means that if the political cooperation is trailing behind, we need to think how to improve it. Because in the past 3 years, it's always remaining the cooperation that always least satisfactory. Now, I want to hear from Malaysian perspective, Dr. Sheila, what you think about the survey.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. And it is indeed a privilege to be part of this ASEAN-China survey launch, especially with a very pertinent topic on managing cooperation in the midst of this geopolitical tension. The survey is very interesting, especially with diversified stakeholders. If earlier survey, there is no inclusion of students, but now with the students' opinion, I think it really gives a different level, a level where we accept the opinion, the voices of the youths, which is very important because these youths, we have, coming from different disciplines, backgrounds, especially those who understand what is happening on world politics, especially with current crisis, not only in the region, Myanmar issue, but also what is happening in Europe with these Russia-Ukraine crisis, conflict over there, especially when we just, had this, facing this global pandemic. So with these very interesting questions set, I think the rest, and also with the focus on the cooperation between China, ASEAN, I think we have very different responses from the elites as well as the students, okay? And I think the acceptance of China's relationship with ASEAN, it's very much neutral, I would say, because there are some ASEAN members who are very keen in partnering with China based on the initiatives, BRI, Global Development Initiative, GSI, and also it is very much on economic terms. Partnering with China very strategically basis on economic, I think it's very inviting, very welcoming. But I think when it comes to on defense, political security, I think there is a very mixed reaction among the elites as well as the students, the stakeholders that have been included in this survey. So I think it's a mixed reaction, and there's a lot of balancing discussion required based on these responses. And I think more than ever, with this geopolitical tension in the region, and also at the global level, what is happening in Europe, it can be felt, the tension can be felt even here in the region. I think discussions such as this is very important, not only among state leaders, but I think it is very important among different stakeholders, because we have global civil society who are very much involved and very vocal on issues that are not only economic, focusing on economic integration, but on the basis on other level, other issues such as human rights. So I will leave with the note on that, and then Kelvin, I give way and we can take this further.
Thank you, Dr. Sheila. I think you pointed out very good angles. We will circle back to your points. Now, I want to hear from the Philippines. Dr. Renato, what do you think about this?
Again, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. And I would like to, again, express my appreciation to Calvin for bringing me into this network, given the fact, of course, that ASEAN-China relation is not my area of specialization. But nevertheless, I'll get my 10-cent worth on my view regarding the survey. As mentioned by the two previous discussants, the survey provides us, of course, the paradox, I would use the term, the paradox of ASEAN-China relation. On the one hand, we welcome and we relish our close economic relation for China. That's a reality we'd have to face. China, of course, is emergent economic power, and of course, conveniently for us, when we talk about economics, China happened to be our neighbor. China has, of course, given focus on ASEAN since, of course, the beginning of the 21st century, during the term, of course, of President Hu Jintao, when he, of course, launched a major effort to harness ASEAN in terms of some partner continued, of course, currently by President Xi Jinping. But nevertheless, the survey also reflects the apprehension when it comes to the issue of defense. ASEAN, even as a whole, is wary about China. And I think we have to be very candid about this. It stems from the fact that, a number of 4 ASEAN member states have, of course, territorial disputes with China over the South China Sea. And of course, further complicated by the fact that despite effort of some of the ASEAN countries to resolve this issue through international law, and I would not have to go into details, China has been ambivalent in trying to address this territorial dispute through the facilities of international law, specifically, of course, the United Nations Convention of the Law of the Sea. So I've heard this from my American friends, how China would resolve the South China Sea dispute will, of course, be the test case on how China would behave, would interact with its, the ASEAN member states. But of course, this is again a challenge for both ASEAN and China to address this issue of trust deficit when it comes, of course, to defense. Some other observation. I also find it interesting that in certain issues, you have neutrality among the ASEAN respondents. Again, this reflects I would use the term cleavage within ASEAN countries on how we perceive China. I tend to agree with Eddie that there's a consensus among the ASEAN political elite. There's still division on how we would have to deal with China. Some would openly say, we don't have any problems with China. They're entitled to that opinion. But for other elite in Southeast Asia, there's still degree, of course, of wariness. Again, given the fact that, it's not always very comfortable for your country, your economy, to be held hostage by only one country. I think recent history has shown to us the danger of having your economy totally tied to a single economy. I don't have to go into further details. We experienced this in 2012. So there's also a degree of wariness whether it will be healthy for ASEAN economies to be linked to only one single economy. So I don't have to go into further details, go into that. Then also, I find it very interesting, aside from the element of neutrality, when it comes to the US-China competition, a number of respondents find this healthy. In one survey showing 24%. So again, this probably reflects ASEAN view on how we have to deal with China. That it might not be always in the interest of ASEAN. As I remember one Singaporean diplomat saying in 2008, that we see only one customer at the end of the day. For the ASEAN countries, the more customers for us, the better. Although we can talk about the inequality among the customers, but I think it will be healthy for us to see that there are customers trying to basically buy ASEAN goodwill, trying to solicit ASEAN confidence, try to, of course, also in terms of our economic relations. And my final point, of course, is the fact that I'm kind of a bit surprised that Japan was hardly mentioned. I don't know whether it's just in terms of how the survey questions, because historically, I remember, based on other surveys, it's always with Japan. But I think the reality on the ground is indicate the fact that slowly Japan has been replaced by China as, of course, the power to reckon with in the region. Okay, I end my presentation there.
Thank you, Dr. Renato. Now, I would like to invite three of you to still in the discussions of which that three of you have mentioned about the defense, the complexity, what I'm borrowing from Dr. Renato is about the paradox of the relationship in the defense aspect. As we know, the defense and political security is very linked on the trust and confidence of the Southeast Asians towards China. And three of you have noted that the trust deficit in every single of your remarks. Now, I want to ask you, frankly, why do you think would be very hard to pump up the Southeast Asian trust on China? We know the result of the survey, almost half are seeing very saying that not trusting China, and it's in particular defense and political. Now, I want to hear from Malaysia. What do you think, Dr. Sheila?
Okay, I think trust has always been an issue when it comes to China. I think, if you look back at the history, some of us are comfortable, some of the states are comfortable, some of the states are not comfortable. But I think it has changed a little, especially from the economic perspectives, because most ASEAN members, or not, even non-ASEAN members, they are comfortable because of the advantage gained from this rising China, rising power of China. But when it comes to security, as what Dr. Renato has mentioned just now, all right, with the issues, maritime issues, it's always, members are taking a step back, that's always that percentage of trust. Can we trust China? Especially when there is this conflict of South China Sea dispute, right? Not complying to international law when we are required to abide by the international law, right? So I think that would be, but I think if I were to speak for Malaysia, I think Malaysia is always on this balancing side, okay? We try to keep this sort of mutual trust, whether to trust. I think trust is something that very ambiguous. So it depends on which element to have this trust on China. So it's safe to say, okay, so we're going to integrate with China economically, right? Okay, but when it comes to defense and so on, I think it's more of a safe approach. There's always a safety net for ASEAN members.
Thank you. Pak Andy, how could we have a more holistic if we are always trailing on the political insecurity and always having a trust deficit on China? Please, over to you.
Yeah, I would say the ball is in China's court. The issues that are relevant here, actually the survey also raised, is the question of the issue of the code of conduct negotiations between ASEAN and China. And China has been dragging its feet. It's been 20 years in the making. All the ASEAN is asking from China is to denounce the use of power in resolving the territorial conflicts. It does not seek to resolve the conflicts because it has to be done bilaterally. But the document that ASEAN is proposing is for China to renounce the use of power in resolving these territorial disputes. They have seen some indications that they're willing, but it has taken 20 years now to come to that, and we are not seeing the end of the light at the end of the tunnel yet. So that's one problem. Also reflected in the survey about the management of the South China Sea dispute is not going in the right direction. So I think that would be a good gesture if China sit down and actually finalize the negotiations, and I think would go a long way in addressing the mistrust that we find in this relationship. Otherwise, I think everything else is almost fine because I think ASEAN is accepting the reality that China is a superpower, but it needs to project a benign, the image of benign superpower, not a ruthless one. But what we are seeing in the South China Sea, I think the picture is not encouraging.
Thank you. So, Dr. Renato, what would be the prescriptions in pumping up our confidence on trust on political security with China?
Okay, I will agree with Eddie very well. Number one, of course, is the again, the litmus test for China is the code of conduct in terms of simply managing the territorial dispute. But again, this is only simple of management. What is crucial, of course, is a long-term resolution of the South China Sea dispute, which of course could be addressed by the adherence to the United Nations Convention of the Law of the Sea. Respecting international law will be a signal by China to the ASEAN countries that I'm willing to have my power constrained by international law. So in a way, great powers would also have to show greater responsibility, and the best responsibility for any great power is showing that it's willing to have its overwhelming power limited, constrained either by international law or multilateral organizations. So again, that's an element of a challenge for China. And again, I agree with Eddie that the responsibility is on Chinese hands. The ball is in the Chinese court. How would it be basically be able to ensure, this 10 ASEAN member states that, it is a benign power, it's a respected power that, of course, it would always accept the fact that given its overwhelming comprehensive capabilities, it is willing to accept certain constraints. I end my answer there.
Thank you. Dr. Sheila, you want to add something?
Yes, it was very interesting to hear His Excellency's speech just now. When he actually gave, that China is ready to work with ASEAN with its prescription of 3 Cs. That is commitment, cooperation, and confidence. So I think, coming up with prescription, anyone can, any state leaders can, any government can, all right? But I think it is always about walking the talk, it's materializing these concepts and making it work, especially with member states who are still, in this mistrust mode with China. And also when ASEAN itself has, in some way, it doesn't show significant effort addressing certain issues and also dealing with important issues, especially the Myanmar issue. So I think, we're looking at many issues, from code of conduct to Myanmar issue. So it takes a lot of effort, not only from China, but also with member states to walk the talk. Prescriptions are there, but how these leaders are going to materialize these prescriptions.
Thank you, Dr. Sheila. I want to move the needles to the discussions of initiative. The survey asks about the initiative that has been offered by ASEAN dialogue partners to ASEAN. You can name it GSI, GDI, Belt and Road, the Americans, IPEF, so on and so forth. And we asked them to rank them. And the Chinese showed up always in the front row in the journals, leads, and the students coming up with the US and sometimes with the South Koreans or even the Indian or the Australian. So I want to ask, in your point of view, what will be the difference in we are looking RCEP, IPEF, Belt and Road Initiative, and others initiative that have been tabled in front of us, how we should perceive it. Many of our friends saying the way we see IPEF is how ASEAN pay tributes to the Americans. Okay, right? Okay, you are not in economic since you are withdrawing from TPP, and now you come up with IPEF. Okay, we pay respect. And then when the results of the survey tells that GSI, people saying, hey, we need to embrace the GSI. Some of the experts, when we ask around, hey, I think this is how ASEAN pay tribute also to the Chinese. Okay, we also embrace the GSI. So how do you perceive this lot of offering to the regions? I think I want to start from to Sheila first, and then to Pak Renato and then Pak Andy. Sheila.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, right. Sorry, can't see. Okay. Okay, so I suppose when there are a lot of offers made in the region, I guess ASEAN as well as the ASEAN member states, they do have options. So options for them to choose from, especially especially for them to develop the economic elements, components in their respective countries. So what offers that attractive? The offers that are attractive, definitely, I think, those offered, especially when US has actually withdrawn its TPP. So with China coming in with its offers, I think it is more attractive for member states, to grab it, what is, most relevant to them, especially to prosper. So it depends on member states, what is offered to them, I suppose. Yeah.
Thank you. Dr. Renato?
Well, my point here is not the offer per se, but the fact that the great powers are offering a lot. So it's indication that ASEAN is very successful in this game. As middle powers and small powers within ASEAN, we don't have that much diplomatic room, unless, of course, there's a healthy competition going on. That is where, of course, ASEAN could take advantage of opportunities. Individually, even as a collective, we cannot create those opportunities. those opportunities would have to be generated by the great powers as they, of course, try to gain our trust, to gain our confidence, to establish diplomatic and economic relation. And this is something that ASEAN should take advantage of. So it's not per se the offer by one country, free and open Indo-Pacific by the US, Belt and Road Initiative by China, formation of Quad, so on. It's the fact that they're offering is something that we have to take advantage of.
Thank you, Dr. Renato. Pak Andy?
Yeah, the problem with IP and IPAF is that it was designed as a part of the America's China containment policy. And that makes many ASEAN countries uncomfortable in endorsing the Indo-Pacific strategy that President Biden announced early this year. The economic framework came out as part of that strategy. So it is still a containment of China strategy. And but I think many ASEAN countries, including Indonesia, joined the IPAF because there is no other platform for the United States to engage in the region. It sort of dropped itself out of the CTPP, and now it needs its own platform. So it created one, and we have not seen the details yet. I mean, I understand they're discussing the details, but the other, I think, the fact that in the survey, the respondents ranked China's initiatives, BRI, GDI, and GSI, number one, is sort of a reflection that it's more acceptable. It serves to some extent the national interests of ASEAN member countries. Of course, there are some questions about the BRI. There's some negative, some downsides of the BRI that needs to be addressed, and some countries are sort of holding back in accepting the projects proposed. But I think by and large, the ASEAN member countries are more comfortable with the initiatives that are coming up from China, in spite of the deficit trust that we mentioned in the survey.
Thank you, Pak Andy. As I think everybody here and also you who are watching in YouTube or Zoom still remember the news that China wants or or has an interest to join the CPTPP. Swiftly, our survey asked directly, do you support China's entries to the CPTPP? And I want to shout out the result that 52% of the overall 52.29% said yes, right? China should, we support China's participation. Zooming in to the lead, 55% said yes, and also the student, 56%. I want to ask each of you, how do you look this interesting result? The Southeast Asian said, yes, China, you should in to the CPTPP. And I want to know what you think about this result. Maybe Pak Andy.
Yes, can you hear me? Okay. From the Indonesian perspective, I think it's the CPTPP is a kind of duplication of the RCEP, but people say the more the merrier. Indonesia has not joined the CPTPP. I'm not sure whether we have the intention to. But it's good that if China is going to join the CPTPP and that the existing member countries are actually welcoming China's participation, because I think any economic platforms in the region without the participation of the biggest economy would simply not work out well. That's my take. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Renato.
Yeah, I agree with Andy. That's, you have the biggest, second largest economy just right in our neighborhood. Why should it not join another economic grouping? So in a way, the general public doesn't really see the nuance of the establishment of this. So for them, the more the merrier. And of course, as the more the merrier, we all try to bring in those countries that, of course, has the big, countries that have the biggest pocket. And the one, of course, who has the biggest pocket at this point in time is China.
Dr. Shea, are you share the same point of view?
Yeah, I guess so. I do have a similar opinion, especially when Malaysia has ratified it. So I guess it's all about the offering, and if it prosper, one, why not prosper thy neighbor? So I guess it works for everybody. So on that note, I think it is quite positive, despite the deficit trust that we were talking about earlier.
Thank you. We come to the last part of our discussions. Later, we have Q&A sessions, but later after the presentation about the launching of the website. I want to ask each of you last questions. As you know, every time a survey being launched, a lot of people being asked, hey, what would be your key highlights from this survey after you are reading it, right? So I have my own, but I think it's not fair if I'm sharing my own key highlights. I will invite each of you to share what would be in your thoughts, the key highlights of ASEAN China Survey 2022. Maybe I want to start from Dr. Sheila.
Yeah, so this is like ladies first, huh, Kelvin? Okay. So, okay. So, but as I said earlier, the questions that has been those questions that designed for this survey were very interesting. Usually we think about it, but we don't voice it out. So I should thank Dr. Shofan and his team to design such questions, because it's very pertinent, and also it's something that we should not be running away from, answering these questions and also getting responses to these questions. So what actually attracted me, or what actually made me to think about this whole ASEAN, China-ASEAN relationship, is that comprehensive strategic partnership. I think it is good to have this balancing approach in the region, and especially with China, and also to have this discussion going on mutual basis, because we do share to a certain degree the norms, the standards, the culture, but there are views where China is not on par with some of the culture or even code of conduct. So it is very interesting to raise these questions, and also especially when having a pertinent discussion, which seems to be very relevant more than ever, especially during this trying time, when this post-pandemic global pandemic, member states and also other countries, small countries, nation states are trying to survive this global pandemic, those who were deeply affected by COVID-19. So by having attractive offers through this multilateral partnerships, it is important to have, it is very important to partner with China, but I think it has to be on a very mutual respect. I think it's very important, especially if we don't simply talk about sovereignty, right? Respecting sovereignty. I think we have to show that, especially when it comes to code of conduct, respecting territorial disputes, human rights issues, the Myanmar issues, which is never ending till now. So I think it's important to bring in all these issues and have a good discussion, relevant, pertinent discussion. Thanks, Kelvin.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Shea. Dr. Renato.
Okay, this is my positive comment regarding the survey. In a way, the survey reflects what Mao Zedong would call the contradictions. Mao Zedong's work in the 1960s on contradiction. After the 20th Party Congress, who cannot forget Mao Zedong? So it's all about looking at the contradiction of ASEAN-China relation. That when it comes to economic issues, investment, trade, it's a positive development. But when it comes to defense, we see, of course, the dark side, the negative. But of course, this constitutes what I would call the whole of China-ASEAN relation. We cannot simply focus on economic, because as mentioned earlier, the diplomatic economic relations provides the basic foundation for economic economic relation. It's again, going back to yin and yang. If your diplomatic strategic relation is shaky, then of course your economic relation would also be on shaky ground. And of course, the key point here, as the three of us mentioned, the responsibility is on the hands of China. How China could resolve this problem of confidence, trust is of course a litmus test for China, not only as a partner of ASEAN, but also as a great power in the 21st century. Whether China would be seen as a responsible great power in the 21st century will depend on how China manages its relationship with its, ASEAN member states. The second point, just the last one, is of course, I agree that we are living dangerously, but the survey reflects that our people is very resilient. In a way, we are up to the challenge of this competition between the great powers. The 24% saying they have no problem with this competition reflects the fact of the resilience of our people, and also the understanding of the ASEAN nuance approach. The nuance approach when we deal with great powers ever since ASEAN was formed in 1967. ASEAN goal is to accept the reality of great powers are here, but we have to take advantage of their interactions. Not just one, but of course, I mentioned great powers, not just one. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Dr. Renato. Andy.
Yeah, the survey puts back the background, the global tensions. But I think that the tensions that really affect the relationship between China and ASEAN is the rivalry between China and United States, which is of course, and also the survey indicated affects the within has impacts on in the ASEAN in the way ASEAN look at China and look at United States. So I take from that survey, one of the highlights is that the majority of the political elite in ASEAN is actually accepting the reality that China is now a superpower, not just economic power, but also political and military power. It is giving the benefit of the doubt by suggesting that their governments should embrace GDI and GSI, and the fact that China ranks #1 as a dialogue partner, and then also its initiatives actually top all the other initiatives. So I think within the ASEAN political elite, they are giving the benefit of the doubt to China. There's no, it's not aligning with China in this emerging superpower contest, but it is giving the benefit of the doubt to China, and but it's also critical about how China is going to use its powers. Again, in the survey indicates the South China Sea, the Code of Conduct, is a problematic to ASEAN countries, and the lack of trust to China. So there are still problems that need to be addressed. I think if we are looking at what are the policy implications from this survey, I think many policymakers in ASEAN capitals and in Beijing can take some lessons from this survey about the areas where they need to work on more. So, and then this relationship fulfills its potentials.
Thank you, Andy. Thank you, Dr. Renato, Dr. Sheila. It has been a very good discussion. So 40 minutes, very good discussions. I think I will not conclude our discussions because I think it's not fair for me to conclude a very good points that have been pointed out by each of you. And I would also like to invite every of you to take a look to the data, take a look to the report, and take your own highlight. And you can make the best use of the survey into the betterment of ASEAN-China relationship. Again, thank you, Pak Andy, Dr. Renato, Dr. Sheila. Thank you for joining us. Now, I would like to hand over the microphone to Jenny. Jenny.
Thank you, Calvin. Once again. Okay, yep. Thank you, Calvin. Once again, thank you, Mr. Andy Bayumi, Dr. Sheila, and also Dr. Renato for the insightful session. We have had an intensive discussion revolving ASEAN-China relations, from the challenges to opportunities in various aspects, as well as other things that follow. And before we move on to the next agenda, which is the public question and answer, and also some little brief presentation on our website, official website. I would first like to acknowledge Ambassador George Savika, who is joining us here. Ambassador Savika is the president of Romanian Institute for European Asian Studies, the former Romanian ambassador to Indonesia. Welcome, Ambassador. We would also like to welcome Mr. Borg Sian Tam, the Deputy Chief Mission of Singapore Mission to ASEAN, who also is joining us here. Welcome. Thank you for attending the launching event. Right, so ladies and gentlemen, before we go to the public question and answer session, you may prepare your question first, and later you can send it to the chat box or may speak it directly later. But just a moment before that, I would like to invite Rana, the coordinator of data management of this ASEAN-China survey, to briefly explain to us how to access our official website of ASEAN-China survey, so you can access all of our data and reports of all surveys for the past 3 years. So Rana, please, you may have the floor.
Okay, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you so much, Jenny, for the floor. So, hello, everyone, and my name is Rana. I am the head of data management at the ASEAN China Survey 2022. So, allow me to first briefly explain about this year's website, which is the ASEANChinaSurvey.com. So, please allow me to share my screen. All right. Okay, we are having a bit of technical difficulties, but I really hope everyone has been having a really great discussion so far. Without further ado, please allow me to explain a bit about our website this year. So to access the data for this year's survey, you can go to ASEANChinaSurvey.com, in which all of our data for this year and also the previous year's surveys are collected and stored. You can also download the report at our ASEANChinaSurvey.com. It is very easy for you to access the data and also the report. All you need to do is to go to ASEANChinaSurvey.com, and then you will be greeted by a landing page, which basically talks about the survey this year and also the survey from the previous 2 years. Okay, I hope you can see now my screen. So like I said earlier, go to ASEANChinaSurvey.com and you will be greeted by this landing page. And then you can go ahead and scroll down and see ASEAN China Survey 2022, and you can click on that. Next. Okay, and then you will be able to choose the section that you want to check out. In this page, you can see that there are 3 sections: section number 1, number 2, and number 3. Number 1 consists of respondents' profile. Section number 2 and number 3 consist of all the questions from this year's survey. A little note, this year we are not releasing the data table because we are making our website more interactive, so anyone is free to access all the data and make your own analysis of this year's survey. Next. Okay, so if you want to choose a specific question, you can go to either section 2 or section 3 and scroll down and see all of the questions listed in the page. Click learn more and you will be directed to the page of all the charts listed in the question. So you will see the charts coming from all of the countries and all of the affiliations, and you can make your own comparison based on those charts. Next. Okay, now to perhaps the most interesting part, to download the survey report, as I have seen some of you have asked previously, you can click download at the top or header of the page, and then scroll down and choose Survey Report 2022, and you will be directed to the PDF file of the survey. You can also obviously compare the data with the previous surveys by accessing the 2020 and 2021 survey result and make your own judgment analysis on how the trends and respondents have developed. Next. Okay, that is all for the website, and I really hope anyone can access the survey and also the data and make your own judgment, see your own highlights, make your own analysis, and I really hope you find it insightful. Thank you so much, and I will give the floor back to Jenny.
Thank you, Rana, for the explanation on the website. So, ladies and gentlemen, as you can already heard before, that all the data, also all the reports can be accessed. So, if you need the data for further study or for your activities, please feel free. And for that, we also would like to say thanks to our partners once again. And this is also your findings, and for that, we're grateful for your contribution. Next, we will have a session of public questions and answers. So for that, for those who have questions, you may drop in the chat box, or also you may raise your hand and you can speak it directly. For that, I would like to invite Dr. Sofwan Albana back to the floor to address questions that comes from the public. Yep. Okay, we have already one question here from Mbak the press, from the media, Liputan 6. Please, you may have the floor.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak my question. I have a question. First, my name is Vina. I'm from liputan6.com, an online media in Indonesia. I want to ask to the FPCI. I have a question why FPCI, which base is in Indonesia, is gained this survey, that is China being the substance of the survey. Why not choosing the US or Australia as the capital country in the world, or Japan as the technological big country in Asia, or the countries in South Asia as well? But why FPCI choose China as the region that is to be conducted in this survey? Because as what mentioned by Miss Shayla before, that the problems and the opportunities and the tensions itself is not only be faced by China, but also other countries as well. So why FPCI, which is conducted the survey 3 times already, why choose China? And then the second question is, I want to ask about the impact of the US and China competition to the Southeast Asian region. Is there something that we have to be ready instead of not only the opportunities that we will gain, but also is there something that is maybe cautioning us that we have to be prepared in the present? That is all my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mbak Vina, for the interesting questions. I believe some of the public are also wondering, so I'll give the floor to Dr. Sofwan to answer the first question. And for the second question, I will address that to the panelists. Dr. Sofwan, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Jenny, and thank you very much for Mbak Vina for the question. First of all, why ASEAN China is the focus of the survey? First, because it is one of the most consequential relationship in the region, and ASEAN China increasingly becoming more and more important. So why this case is put as the focus is because of it is consequential, but at the same time, it is also attracted a lot of controversy and a lot of nuance in the relationship, unlike the other more established relationship between ASEAN and Japan, for example. So we can see the nuance more on that. But of course, the team is also thinking about making surveys on other dialogue partners as well in the future. But when we are conducting this, we think that we might start from the most interesting and increasingly important, but also controversial first. I mean, if we are conducting survey on ASEAN China, there are different aspects and complexities that we can uncover and will be more helpful for the policymakers as well as observers to understand the complexity of the issue. But again, of course, we are also looking forward to expand the survey to other dialogue partners as well in the future if the resource will allow us. So we are looking forward to that. And yeah, thank you very much for the question. So it's because of the impact, the significance of the issue, but also because of the controversy and dilemmas coming on the relationship. There's no more dilemmatic relationship that ASEAN has compared to China. With Japan, it has been there for a long time, right? I mean, and generally not so controversial. So it's not really adding. I mean, we can expect things there. I mean, if we conduct survey, but with China, there are some surprising things, some interesting patterns that we can actually see. But yes, we are looking forward to expand the survey to other dialogue partners as well. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Safwan, for addressing the first question. Next, for the second question, still from Bafina regarding, is there anything that we need to be ready of, not only the opportunities, but in case if there is any warnings that we have to address regarding ASEAN-China relations forward. I will address it to the panelists, maybe from Dr. Sheila or Dr. Renato, and also from Mr. Andy Bayuni, anyone who wants to address this question. Dr. Sheila or Mr. Andy Bayuni are also unmuting, so.
Go ahead, Ms. Sheila.
We'll go to Mr. Andy Bayuni. Go ahead, Dr. Sheila.
All right. Okay, so it's me. All right. I think as much as we are always, given the opportunities, to create or to build a strategic partnership with China, when it comes, I think if it is with the question arising if ASEAN should be cautious amidst any geopolitical tension between US and China, I think member states are always careful, cautious, because it is very anarchy. I think, so you can never say what's going to happen. No one expected Ukraine-Russia conflict. So I think after that, everyone is quite ready and prepared. But on the similar note, I guess in the region, creating the diplomatic relation, I think that would always keep us to have that dialogue going on. That's why we have all these, dialogues with relevant partners involving relevant stakeholders. So as much as we are cautious, I think it is safe to say we are treading the waters carefully.
Thank you, Dr. Sheila, for the answer. Moving on to Mr. Andy Bayuni, you may have the floor.
Yeah, I just want to add to what Sheila said. There has been a trade war between the United States and China in the last 5 or 6 years, and that impacted, of course, ASEAN economies as well, for good or for bad. And now, recently, we're seeing a greater tension between the United States and China over Taiwan, for example. Right? That is, if anything flares up from there, it's going to impact us as well. There have been skirmishes of warships from the United States and China in the South China Sea. Now, that's so close to home, and if something erupted, that's going to affect us. And I think ASEAN countries will have to take a position in this conflicts. We hope we don't have to. We hope we don't have to take sides. But this is the reason why I think it's also reflected in the survey that ASEAN member states or ASEAN as a association should take a more progressive action in mediating or reducing the tension between the two superpowers. So we are not taking sides. I think that's already correct, but we should not be quiet. We should also be taking active part in making sure that this region, East Asia, Pacific, or Indo-Pacific, does not erupt into a zone of conflict.
Thank you, Mr. Andy Bayuni, for your answer. I hope that answers your question, Mbak Vina. And we will open for 2 more slots for public questions and answers. So if you have any question, you may drop it in the chat box, or you can also raise your hand. If we have had questions coming in from the YouTube as well. I'll address that from Mod Aminul Karim. Question is, are the Quad and China ASEAN CSP, the Comprehensive Strategic Partnership, since they are coming from opposite direction, are they disturbing the ASEAN centrality? That's the first question. And the second is, how can ASEAN solve the Myanmar crisis, maybe in cooperation with China? I believe this will also be addressed to the panelists. So maybe Dr. Renato, again, Mr. Andy Bayuni, or Dr. Sheila, if you have any answers for this, or even Dr. Sofwan.
Well, of course, in terms of looking at Quad and China, they would also have the rhetoric of ASEAN centrality. Well and good. All 4 member states of Quad emphasizes, they came out with a statement. But of course, the concern of ASEAN is looking at their actions. Again, going back to the earlier point, the question raised, it's great. It's an opportune time for ASEAN if there's a healthy competition going on. The challenge, of course, is this healthy competition becomes an outright armed conflict, as mentioned by Andy. And Andy raised a very interesting point about, it's not that, my concern as an academic and as a Filipino is not actually the South China Sea, West Philippine Sea. It's what's happening north of our country, across the Luzon Strait. And that's no less, of course, than the Taiwan Straits. And especially in the case of the Philippines, ASEAN countries could afford to say we would like to be neutral. Not in the case of the Philippines, because as everyone knows, we are a strategic ally of the United States. With our alliance system with the United States, if you have a conflict between China and, of course, the United States, we have an alliance commitment with the United States. So, and of course, the most challenging aspect when it comes to, and this is raised by Andy and Sheila, is when we have to make that difficult choice. And of course, the other challenge, especially in the case of the Philippines, if the conflict spills over into Southeast Asia, given, of course, the fact that the conflict will be maritime in nature. So it will spread. So again, this is a concern. ASEAN centrality is something that, of course, ASEAN values, but of course, the member states, the great powers pay lip service to ASEAN centrality. The challenge, of course, for ASEAN is to prevent what I would call the case of unintended consequences. Developments that would happen beyond the control of the 10 member states of ASEAN countries. So this is something that we should always be guarded for.
Thank you, Dr. Renato. Is there any other panelists that would like to add in before I close the public?
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I'll take up the second question about whether China can also help find a resolution to the problem in Myanmar. I think China, of course, has some leverage with the junta that it can use actually to stop the brutality. ASEAN thought we had influence or leverage with the junta, but obviously, after more than 1 year and a half now since the coup, I think ASEAN learned that we have limitations in influencing the course of the political events inside Myanmar. But it doesn't mean that we should stop trying. I think we had the foreign ministers meeting here in Jakarta last week. Not very successful, but I think at least it raised the point that the problem is there and they need to be more serious in trying to address it. But of course, the junta is belligerent and it's just not responding to pressures, not from ASEAN, not from China, not from the international community. But so it has to be a concerted effort. Every organization, every country that has leverage should actually put the pressure on the junta to stop the brutality.
Yeah. I just want to add some little things related to the US-China competition in the region and ASEAN's response. I think as confirmed with the survey, the general opinion is that they see ASEAN-China rivalry as a geopolitical fact that cannot be avoided. However, it is also important to stress that ASEAN people and I believe ASEAN elites and leaders hope that the patterns of relationship is not only shaped by this great power rivalry. ASEAN countries and ASEAN has agencies, and they continuously express their willingness that their agency to be respected. And ASEAN is one of the ways to ensure that their agency is respected. So ASEAN might not be always effective, but ASEAN provided the platform to increase their leverage in providing the room for maneuver in that case, although there are different orientation in different ASEAN countries. So I think the question on the impact of the Great Power Rivalry is not only the question to ASEAN and ASEAN countries itself, but also on the great powers such as China and the United States. Are they willing to go beyond power politics? Are they willing to make and believe in imaginations beyond great power politics and understand that international relations can be much better than defined by balance of power, than defined by power politics, but by giving the opportunity for more complex and more nuanced relationship by listening to the less powerful countries. I think that's the theme, the message that ASEAN also would like to convey through the ASEAN Outlook on Indo-Pacific. It is not quite clear what are the concrete actions, but this is a message to send the message that we want our agency to be respected here. We do not want to be in the ancient Malay parable of two elephants fighting, the Pelanduk, the mouse deer, killed in that fight. We want to be the kancil, the mouse deer, who is smart enough to help the fighting elephants to find commonalities between them and happy together with the wisdom of the kancil and with the wisdom of the mouse deer. I think that ASEAN would like to do to increase the leverage of the less powerful states, providing them with room for maneuver and trying to convince the great powers that the world should not be defined by the rivalry. Yes, the rivalry is there, but the world is much more colorful than that. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sofwan, for the answer. Thank you all panelists as well for addressing the public questions. Ladies and gentlemen, we have to close the public question and answer session. And this marks the end of ASEAN China Survey 2022 launching event. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for your participation and for tuning into the event today. Also, once again, thank you, Dr. Renato, Dr. Sheila, Mr. Andy Bayuni for participating and for contributing to the panel discussion. For our partners as well, 21 partners from universities, think tanks, and CSOs all across ASEAN countries, and for all guests and colleagues who are also tuning in from Zoom, as well as from the YouTube channel. Again, you can access and revisit our survey results through our official website, ASEANChinaSurvey.com, and the survey this year, the report will soon be available as well on that website. If you have any question or inquiry, please don't hesitate to contact us via email. I will drop the email in the chat box. So anytime you might have an inquiry or question, you can contact us. We would also like to inform you, ladies and gentlemen, that next week on Saturday, 5 November, FPCI will be having a virtual global town hall, an East, West, North, South global grassroots dialogue where world leaders, leading minds, experts, and grassroots will be on the same panel discussing about the most pressing issues in the world. That covers issues such as geopolitics, G20, climate change, the world as democracies versus autocracies, the most awaited session, of course. We also have youth session, global governance, and world economy session, many others. So countries from African region, European, Asian, all the way to Pacific Islands, they're also joining. So you don't want to miss it. So you can go to visit our website on gth2022.com to register and find out more about the event. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for tuning in. You may now leave the Zoom meeting and see you on our next event.